Okay. Hello, Samm Deighan. When and how did you first see the movie Ebola Syndrome?
I want to say my late teens or early 20s. It was definitely the first Category 3 movie I saw, and it was on the sort of list of notorious, hard to find movies that I knew I needed to track down, and it certainly did not disappoint.
Okay. Do you think the movie's entertainment value is at least partially, I don't know, more relevant now because of COVID?
I don't know that I can totally answer that. I don't know if the entertainment value makes it more relevant now, but I think it is more relatable in a sense. I mean, all of the Cat 3 movies have such wild, over the top plots that I don't think they're trying to be, relatable or based in realism. But I do think it gives it a very different context watching it now.
Yeah, most definitely. So I I thought some of the racial jokes were, hilarious and also pretty off color. And I just thought racism is depicted in this movie in an interesting way that I found to be realistic, but something that's not like inherently condemned within the text of the movie. I was wondering what your thoughts on it were.
I would have to say that I think it's meant to be depicted in a way that makes unlikable characters more unlikable. Like, I don't think Herman Yao, the director, who is, progressive, left wing, has, great politics. I don't think he intentionally wanted viewers to be sympathetic with the racism. But in a lot of Category 3 movies, they are worlds populated by these really unlikable characters. Like, even the victimized characters are people that you just kind of hate. So I think the racism is meant to make Anthony Wong's character just even more despicable.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. It's not like you never see that in Hollywood. And it makes it like realistic and also, the world, part of the world that you're talking about. But it would definitely stick out as a sore thumb for some people that is just like a deal breaker, and also the animal violence as well. So is there anything else you wanted to say about the animal violence in this movie?
Well, I think that's something that pops up in a lot of Hong Kong movies. You see it throughout Shaw Brothers films. I think some of it is maybe a little bit of a cultural thing where it's just less jarring, but I do think sort of connecting it to the note of the issue of racism, I think a lot of what's going on in this film, which connects it to other Category 3 movies, is this like general vibe of exploitation and violence, and like, this is not a kind universe. It's full of people trying to take advantage of each other and exploit one another. And so I think that's what both the animal violence and the sexual violence and the racism, it's like they're all sort of part of that web of the hatred.
So I really, how do you say his name? Kei-san, is that how I say his name?
Akai, the main character, you mean?
Yeah. Right. So, but he's a character you can easily condemn, but he's got such great swagger in that sleazy way. Do you kind of wish Hollywood would have more characters like him lead a movie that are interesting while also revolting?
So this is hard for me to answer because I guess my frame of reference is not really towards Hollywood. Like, I'm not a big fan of a lot of the, Hollywood movies produced in the last couple decades, because I think there's just this mainstream sensibility that keeps anything interesting from happening. So first of all, I don't think you could make a film like this now.
Right.
And secondly, I just don't think anything like this would be possible in the really restrictive environment that Hollywood sort of flourishes in. It's like everything has to be commercially accessible. And the thing about Cat 3 movies is that they're intentionally trying to be inaccessible.
Yeah. Could you break down the term category 3 for some people?
Sure. So it's a little bit complicated, and I think it definitely, to appreciate a movie like this and not be off put by some of the things going on that we've been talking about, it helps to understand the context. So it's this kind of rare situation where category 3 is a rating system. So it's sort of like NC-17, but way more extreme even than that arose in the late 80s in Hong Kong cinema, but it also is a subgenre, which is kind of how I've been talking about it, because a lot of the category 3 movies, like there are different genres within it, like there are softcore erotic films and supernatural black magic movies and these sorts of films like Ebola Syndrome and Untold Story that have more of a true crime basis, but they all have a lot of sort of similar character types and themes and tropes. So a lot of film critics do tend to refer to them more as like a loose genre than just a rating system.
Okay, and as a genre, what are some other movies you would love to recommend from it?
Well, this is also a hard question because I sometimes grapple with, and on my podcast, Which of the Death Nerve, we have an episode where we really go into what category 3 means and the history of it. And something that we sort of struggled with on there is the issue of whether you should recommend these or not. I think if if it's within someone's particular taste and you like more extreme cinema, more psychotronic movies, then definitely Cat 3 will appeal to you. But if you're someone with more of a mainstream taste, these films have a lot of rape scenes, a lot of sexual violence, just kind of over the top violence in general. And like you pointed out with Ebola Syndrome, occasional animal violence. So they're hard to recommend without knowing who I'm recommending them to. But my favorites are definitely some of the movies that Anthony Wong and Herman Yao made together, like Ebola Syndrome and Untold Story. There are these erotic movies called the Erotic Ghost Story kind of series. Those are great if you want something that goes more into that soft core erotica territory. There are so many of these. But Anthony Wong is the king. And so anything with Anthony Wong is a great place to start.
Nice. So were you pretty stoked when Vinegar Syndrome asked you to do the commentary for this one?
My head pretty much exploded, yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
I love working with them, which I have done many times, but it's nice to be able to break more into Hong Kong cinema, which is something that I've gotten to do in the last probably like 2 or 3 years with other companies like 88 Films based in England as well.
Oh, I didn't know about that. What are some of the tracks you did for them?
So the only Cat 3 movie I've done for them is the first erotic ghost story movie, which is directed by this guy named Lam Gai Kai, who's also a really important figure in Hong Kong cinema in category 3. He was one of the first people to start making these types of movies when the rating system emerged in 1988. But I've also done some Shaw Brothers for them. Like recently I did a commentary for a movie called Disciples of Shaolin with Alexander Fouché. So lots of fun stuff.
That's awesome. And it was a revelation for me to find out not only that this movie, Ebola Syndrome, is a thing, because the first time I saw it, it blew my mind. I saw the announcement, that I watched it on a lousy YouTube rip. But then to hear your track and your passion And now I listened to the Twitch of the Death episode where you're talking about Jimmy Wang Yu. It's just
yes,
like,
we love him.
yeah. Oh, that was a fun episode.
Yeah, that's another. I got to do a commentary for Chinese Boxer for 88 Films. So
Nice.
I am definitely a big Jimmy Wang Yu fan. And I know that for all of us, that was one of our favorite episodes so far, getting to talk about Master of the Flying Guillotine and his career.
And all the one-armed movies. That was funny.
So many.
Yeah.
There's a whole extended
You list them all up at
universe.
one point.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Has it been like, obviously you've liked these movies for a long time, Asian movies, but have you been in overdrive with them lately?
Yeah, so I've been doing some writing for an as yet unannounced project on Hong Kong crime films in category 3 and stuff like that. So I definitely have been thinking about it more, I guess.
Nice. One thing of the podcast that you talked about that I thought was pretty humorous was the Triad involvement with
Yeah.
a lot of Hong Kong movies. Was there any Triad involvement in Ebola Syndrome you know of?
Not that I know of, but
Yeah.
it could be the sort of thing that just kind of went under the radar, because there was this period where it was like every producer seemingly had these kind of either very close or distant triad connections. And there are all these wild stories about like producers being shot and killed in the
Oh my
late
God.
90s, which in the context of Hollywood, who certainly has their own connection to corruption and dirty money and, crazy power mad producers, it's unfathomable to think that like somebody from the mob would just start shooting Hollywood producers. Though sometimes you wish it would happen.
Yeah. I saw no, never mind. Well, why do you think the North American Blu-ray market has been a little slow to release some of these amazing Asian films such as Ebola Syndrome?
I think mostly it's because there's historically not been a big US fan base for them.
Mhm.
Certainly, a lot of Americans love Kung Fu movies and Shaw Brothers and some Golden Harvest productions. Like, Jackie Chan is wildly popular here for good reason.
Yeah,
But I think these movies are so much more obscure and inaccessible. And I imagine that not a lot of them have been released because there are probably rights issues. It's hard to get a hold of original masters and prints even to restore.
Mm.
There have been, I think, a couple releases in the last year or two that indicate that companies now kind of, especially companies that deal with more extreme cinema like Unearthed and Vinegar Syndrome,
Mhm.
have sort of clued into the fact that these exist and there's a market for them, which is great.
Definitely. I just feel like I've been collecting Blu-rays since like 2015, and I was always when I first started collecting, I would see a lot of great Italian movies come out, but I was kind of wondering, hey, where's my Shaw Brothers box set? It took a little bit
Now
of
there's a
time.
massive one.
Yeah, I have it over there. It's great, Volume 1. Are there like particular Shaw Brothers movies you're really jonesing to get into for like a commentary track?
Well, I love Shaw Brothers. That it
Yeah.
was something that I watched as a kid with my dad in
Oh, wow.
really bad dubbed versions. And so
Yeah.
it's just like been, as far as subgenres go, kind of a lifelong favorite. But one of the things that I've been writing about more recently is Shaw Brothers actually made a series of really explicit horror films in the 70s and early 80s that pretty much led to these category 3 films. Like they
Huh.
wouldn't exist without the Shaw Brothers movies. Like there are some totally wild ones. Like there's this director named Kwei Chi Hung who made a lot of them. Like his movie Killer Snakes is highly recommended. lots of crazy, unexpected things happening. Definitely some animal violence, but he made other great movies like this one called Corpse Mania that feels like a giallo film sort of, but has a necrophilia subplot, and it's crazy. So there, I think Shaw Brothers got into horror movies kind of late in the game because they felt like they had to compete with newer studios like Golden Harvest. And it's like they just let these directors kind of go buck wild in the best possible way. So I would love to see more Shaw Brothers horror get released. Some of it, like I know that there are some of those, what's the company? Celestial, who have
Yeah.
done some DVD releases. Like you can find Corpse Mania, you can find things like this movie called Seeding of a Ghost and Boxer's Omen on DVDs, but they're most of them I think are out of print or kind of hard to find. So it would be great if somebody could start restoring and releasing those on Blu Ray.
Well, hopefully, we get a lot more. That's an idea. Fingers crossed, ideal scenario. So I enjoyed interviewing Grady Hendrix recently.
Yeah, he's great.
And he's just like a plethora of knowledge, and so are you. How do you guys research this stuff?
Very slowly and tediously. There's not a ton in English, but there gradually has been more. You really, I think if you just kind of dig online, you can find old interviews, and there are definitely some bloggers who have kind of created a foundation and wrote about some of these films when it was impossible to find them aside from in bootleg form. So you really just have to dig pretty deep.
Yeah. Could you tell me some of these bloggers?
I'm trying to think. So my favorite one, which is how years ago I found out about some of these more obscure Shaw Brothers horror movies. There's this long-running blog called Cool Ass Cinema, I think is the name. And I mean, he's written about like every subgenre imaginable, but years ago did this great like 3-part article, I think for Halloween or around Halloween season, just talking about some of these Shaw Brothers horror movies. And I was like, what? Like I had no idea that they existed because like I said, they've been hard to find, but I think that's starting to change. Like you can even find some of them weirdly streaming on places like Amazon, or at least you could for a while. So I think the tide is sort of shifting.
Yeah, the Arrow video box set is great. Have you gotten your hands on it?
I haven't, and I am on. So I'm actually not a Blu Ray collector. Like I have a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I love physical media, but I just am not a person who likes owning a lot of stuff. And so it's like I tend to amass books more than anything else. And I do have a pretty big Blu Ray collection that I'm trying to sort of pare down and not let it get bigger. So I'm sure I'll get it at some point, but I'm trying to resist buying especially any more of like those big sets because they just take up so much space.
My Godzilla set is so awkward. It's like large. It's like taller than most sets. It's like just sort of lying on a table.
It's such a like. I think some of it also where the Criterion stuff is concerned, because I have access to Criterion channel. Anytime I want to watch it, I just go on the channel. Like the Godzilla set and the Zatoichi set, it's great that all of those are accessible. And they did such, gorgeous restoration work.
Most definitely. All right. Well, Sam, thanks a lot for your time. It's always a lot of fun to talk to you. Like I said, I enjoyed your episode on Twitch of the Death Nerve about Jimmy Wayne Hughes. So people should definitely check that podcast out because you guys put out a lot of content. Like, was it like every every week, every 2 weeks?
Every 2 weeks usually.
Yeah.
And we do a fair number. So we try to keep a good mix. Like the theme is sort of more psychotronic cinema rather than any particular subgenre. But we've done a couple of Hong Kong episodes, and those are probably my personal favorite just because I never get tired of talking about Hong Kong movies.
Clearly not. And I also really enjoyed your posse cut commentary track on Flesh for Frankenstein with your
yes.
fellow Daughters of Darkness, Heather Drade and Kat Ellinger. That was a lot of fun. You guys are definitely having a good time with that one.
We were very excited to be able to talk about that. I mean, I think for all three of us, it's one of our favorite movies. So again, it was something where when I found out that we were going to get to do the track, my head exploded a little.
That's awesome. One more thing I would love for you to plug a little bit before I let you go is, can you tell people what they can expect from your Patreon?
Yeah, so usually on my Patreon, we put out the Twitch of the Death Nerve episodes like a week early when we can. Sometimes our recording schedule doesn't allow for that, but most of the time that happens. I do a monthly newsletter. Usually every month I'll do either a long written essay or a video essay. And the video essays are definitely more time consuming, but they're my favorite to do. I think, I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm pretty sure what I want to focus on for video essays this month is Pasolini, because his birthday was a couple days ago and it's the 100-year anniversary of his birth this month, and he's one of my favorite directors. So
That's
there's also a lot of different kinds of content on my Patreon. Like it's not just cult movies. I do definitely art house and classic cinema as well. So a wide range.
Yeah, definitely. Well, fans of Samm Deighan should check it out, but fans of cinema in general should check it out. And I saw there's two tiers. There's the Orson Welles and the Vader Werner Fassbender.
Yes. Yeah, the one tier is all of my newsletters and written essays, and the other tier is for video essays just because there's so much more work.
Fair enough. Well, I'm here to help. I'm pro Samm Deighan agenda. So
thank you.
Yeah, as you know, you're welcome. Good luck with everything, and be well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.